You just turned the kitchen light on, and the roach disappeared beneath the stove again. The pest company already sprayed this house twice this year, yet the ants still returned with the summer heat. Families in the Ozark Hills once handled this problem with a $4 powder sold in feed stores for generations. The method appeared in rural household bulletins until the late 1952, then quietly disappeared. And when I found the original 1936 United States Department of Agriculture bulletin buried in a Missouri archive basement, the story started making sense. The first time I drove into Newton County, Arkansas, the humidity was so thick the truck windows fogged from the outside. About 15 miles past Jasper, the pavement narrowed into cracked gravel roads, winding through old cattle land and hardwood forest. That was where I met Harold Whitaker, an 82-year-old retired feed mill worker living in the same farmhouse his parents bought in 1948. What caught my attention was not the house itself, it was what was missing from it. No chemical smell, no pest control signs stuck in the yard, no traps beneath the sink. And despite the July heat pushing well past 90 degrees, I could not find ants along the windows, roaches beneath the appliances, or flies gathering near the pantry the way you see in most rural homes during summer. Harold laughed when I asked him who handled his pest control. "Nobody," he said. "Never paid for it once." At first, I assumed he was exaggerating. Then he walked me through the back pantry beside the kitchen. Along the shelf corners sat a thin white powder packed carefully into the seams of the wood. More of it lined the foundation stones outside near the crawl space vents. I noticed the same thing around old metal feed bins inside the shed behind the chicken coop. Harold bent down and rubbed the powder between his fingers. "My grandmother started using this during the Depression," he told me. "Never saw a reason to stop." That sentence stayed with me the entire drive back home. Because families like Harold's lived through Arkansas summers long before exterminator trucks existed. Yet somehow, they managed to keep insects under control without monthly spraying contracts or shelves full of chemicals. And once I started digging through old county extension records and grain storage manuals, the modern pest business started looking very different. If you appreciate practical old-world methods like this, subscribe. The average homeowner today is not paying to eliminate insects, they are paying to manage them temporarily. That distinction matters more than most people realize. Modern pest control is built around recurring treatment cycles. A technician sprays the foundation, dusts a few corners, sets traps, and schedules the next visit before leaving the driveway. 3 months later, the insects slowly return with the weather change, moisture shift, or breeding cycle, and the process starts all over again. In many parts of the country, homeowners now spend anywhere from $400 to $1,200 every year on routine pest contracts alone. Bedbug treatments can climb into the thousands, and despite stronger chemicals than ever before, repeat infestations have become increasingly common in apartments, suburban homes, and even newly built properties. Part of the problem is simple biology. Chemical treatments lose effectiveness over time as insects adapt and avoid treated areas. But another problem sits underneath all of this quietly. Most modern systems focus on reacting to insects after they settle inside the house. Older rural families approach the problem differently. They focused on interrupting the insect before it ever established itself indoors. That is why old feed sheds, grain rooms, smokehouses, and Appalachian root cellars often stayed surprisingly controlled despite lacking modern extermination services. The goal was not repeated spraying. The goal was creating conditions insects struggled to survive in at all. And here is the part most people never hear anymore. Appalachian farm families rarely tried to poison insects directly. What they used instead worked for an entirely different reason. The powder Harold showed me was food-grade diatomaceous earth. Most people walk past it in hardware stores without realizing American farm families relied on it for generations before chemical pest services became common. Diatomaceous earth comes from fossilized freshwater algae called diatoms. Over time, their silica shells compressed into soft mineral deposits that break into microscopic sharp particles when ground into powder. To your fingertips, it feels soft as flour. To an insect, it feels like crawling through broken glass. The powder does not poison insects. It damages the protective outer layer covering their bodies, causing them to lose moisture and dehydrate. That difference matters because insects can slowly adapt to chemical pesticides over time. Physical abrasion works differently. That is one reason agricultural storage systems never fully abandoned it. Research discussing diatomaceous earth as an alternative to chemical insecticides in stored grain continued appearing long after suburban homeowners stopped hearing about it. The more I researched it, the stranger the silence around this powder started to feel. Especially because the industries still using it today are industries where contamination and storage failure can cost millions of dollars. And that is where this story started changing completely. Long after suburban homeowners stopped hearing about diatomaceous earth, agricultural storage systems quietly kept using it because the material continued solving one problem reliably: protecting stored grain from insects without contaminating food supplies. That detail matters more than most people realize. In large grain facilities, a serious infestation can destroy enormous amounts of stored product. Yet even decades after chemical pest treatments became standard in suburban America, agricultural researchers continued studying dry mineral barriers like diatomaceous earth for stored grain protection. One of the records that stopped me cold came from Purdue University's entomology extension publications discussing stored product pests and grain protection systems. That changes the feeling of this story completely. Because if this powder truly stopped working, industries responsible for protecting millions of dollars in stored crops would have abandoned it years ago. Instead, many continued relying on physical dust barriers, while suburban homeowners entered endless cycles of recurring exterminator visits and seasonal chemical spraying. And the reason is simple. Chemical pesticides target biological systems. Insects slowly adapt to over generations. Diatomaceous earth works physically. The powder damages the insect's outer protective layer instead of poisoning it chemically. When I asked Harold why his family never switched to modern treatments, he shrugged. Poison stops working eventually, he said. Dry powder doesn't. And honestly, that sentence explains why those old farmhouses stayed quiet year after year, while modern homes kept restarting the same battle every summer. After World War II, America changed fast. Millions of families moved into suburbs built almost overnight, and an entire industry grew around convenience. Lawn chemicals replaced compost piles. Spray cans replaced old storage methods. Service companies replaced practical household routines people once handled themselves. Pest control changed with it. Chemical manufacturers exploded during the post-war boom, and extermination companies built recurring business models around scheduled treatments. Quarterly spraying became normal. Monthly contracts became common. The idea that homeowners could permanently manage many insect problems on their own slowly disappeared from everyday life. And from a business perspective, that shift made perfect sense. Diatomaceous earth created a problem for recurring service industries because it was cheap, stable, and lasted a long time when kept dry. A 10-pound bag could sit on a shelf for months and still work the same way. There was very little repeat profit built into it. Chemical systems worked differently. Sprays weakened over time. Moisture diluted treatments. Insects avoided certain areas. Homeowners needed repeat visits, stronger applications, and updated products every season. The recurring cycle became the business itself. The strange part is that none of this required secrecy. Nobody needed to hide diatomaceous earth. Americans simply stopped hearing about it generation by generation, while modern products filled store shelves and television commercials. And honestly, that may be the saddest part of this entire story. It was not that Americans lost the ability to solve these problems. They slowly stopped being taught they could. The old families in places like Arkansas, Kentucky, and Missouri never thought of pest control as a subscription service. To them, it was basic household maintenance passed down the same way people passed down gardening, food storage, or fence repair. But the method those families used worked best when applied in one very specific way around the house, and that part almost disappeared completely. Most people use diatomaceous earth incorrectly because they treat it like a chemical spray. The old extension manuals handled it differently. The method started outside. A 10-pound bag of food-grade diatomaceous earth usually costs between $6 and $9 at most farm supply or hardware stores. The old farmers often applied it by hand, but today a simple bellows duster makes the process cleaner and far more precise. Most cost less than $15 and sit near pesticide sprayers in garden aisles. The first step is creating a thin perimeter line around the entire foundation of the house. Not thick piles, just a light dusting where insects naturally travel near crawlspace vents, siding gaps, pipe openings, and stone seams. Then move indoors beneath refrigerators, behind stoves, under sinks, attic corners, pantry shelves, and basement edges where moisture and darkness attract insect movement. The important detail is consistency, not quantity. During the first week, most people notice less visible movement around kitchens and baseboards. By the second week, the regular pathways insects use begin thinning out. Around the third week, nesting activity often starts collapsing because insects continue carrying particles back into hidden areas. By the fourth week, many homes feel noticeably quieter at night, especially in humid summer conditions when insect activity usually increases. Harold told me his grandmother reapplied the perimeter every spring and early fall like clockwork. Not because the powder stopped working, but because heavy rain and ground moisture slowly broke the barrier outdoors over time. And before I show you the United States Department of Agriculture bulletin itself, there is one mistake the old extension manuals warned homeowners never to make with this powder. A month after visiting Harold, I drove to the University of Missouri Agricultural Archive in Columbia. Down in the basement storage level, behind rows of humidity-controlled filing shelves, sat a collection of United States Department of Agriculture cooperative extension bulletins most people have probably never touched in decades. One folder stopped me immediately. The bulletin was dated in 1936 and titled Household Insect Control in Rural Structures. It was written by extension entomologist Charles B. Whitmore and distributed through county agricultural offices across Missouri and Arkansas during the late Depression years. The paper had turned yellow around the edges, dust stains covered the corners, and faded county circulation stamps still marked the front cover. Inside the margins were handwritten notes from farmers describing foundation dusting methods and pantry storage routines. What struck me most was how ordinary the recommendations sounded. No expensive systems, no specialized service contracts, just practical instructions families followed season after season because they worked. Standing there holding that bulletin, I realized something important. This was never hidden elite knowledge. It was ordinary household knowledge passed between families until America slowly stopped living that way. And once you hear the objections people raise today, you begin understanding how completely that mindset disappeared. The first objection people usually raise is safety. Food-grade diatomaceous earth is very different from pool-grade products used in filtration systems. The food-grade version is processed differently and has been used for decades around grain storage and agricultural handling. The old extension manuals always emphasized light applications in dry areas, not thick clouds of airborne dust spread carelessly through the house. The second objection is that modern homes are different, but insects still follow the same basic patterns they followed 100 years ago. Apartments, condos, suburban homes, crawl spaces, and newer construction all contain warm, dark entry points around plumbing, foundations, vents, and wall gaps. The materials changed. Insect behavior largely did not. The third objection usually comes from professionals. My exterminator told me this does not work. The reality is more complicated than that. Many commercial pest systems already use silica-based dust products inside wall voids and hidden structural spaces because physical mineral barriers remain effective for long periods. The disagreement is often less about whether the powder works and more about whether homeowners should depend entirely on recurring service applications. And honestly, if you are still unsure, start small. One pantry corner, one doorway, one section of foundation. You will know quickly, because the final part of this story is not really about bugs at all. Americans once passed practical household knowledge from one generation to the next as naturally as recipes or gardening. Then little by little, convenience replaced self-reliance, and recurring services replaced skills families once considered normal. But there is a growing group of people quietly relearning those old methods before they disappear completely. How much have you spent trying to solve pest problems permanently? And did any of it actually last? Leave it in the comments. And if you enjoy relearning the practical knowledge American families once considered normal, subscribe. I've been digging through a 1928 forestry bulletin showing how Appalachian families protected barnwood for decades using a simple lime wash mixture most people forgot about. Some knowledge disappears because it stopped working, and some disappears because people stopped passing it down. I'll see you next week.